On this day, 1992, Phil Alden Robinson's terrific comedy crime caper Sneakers, starring the great Robert Redford, opens in theaters.
And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not-So-Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Monday morning with me here in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Today marks 32 years since the release of what I consider to be a kind of under-the-radar near masterpiece from the greatest movie decade of them all. That would be the 90s. Sorry for you fans of the 70s, or even contemporary movies. We've seen so many incredible films since the onset of the 2000s. But I maintain that at least as far as Hollywood is concerned, and I mean the independent route as well, Hollywood never did it better than they did during the 90s. But even with that, there are movies with big name casts that were significant box office hits that still feel like they're somewhat under the radar. Now, in the days of streaming, some of that is whether or not a movie has a long run on Netflix or Prime, or could some interest be drummed up if it's on Peacock or HBO Max, now Max. These are the things that we don't really know for sure. But 32 years ago today, for the last time in his career, Robert Redford, who was in his mid-50s, played the sort of boyish role, the kind of charming lady killer, but in a more of a PG kind of way. And he played it so beautifully in this film. And as I've said with Redford, I mentioned it as far as during the episode on The Sting, which is, it has certain parallels to Sneakers, not the primary kind of con. It's not really that. But they're both caper films. They're both crime films. And they both have at least some element of comedy. I would argue that Sneakers has a greater element of comedy than The Sting, although The Sting does have some broad laughs. But Redford's unique magic is that despite not being the most expansive actor, despite not being a master thespian, there are certain kinds of roles that he hits and has hit in his career as well as anyone. The Sting is one of those roles. The Natural, in a much more dramatic realm, is another. And this movie, Sneakers, is a third. I love the movie he did in the 80s, Legal Eagles. That was among my list of guilty pleasures. I think that film is fantastic. A lot of people they don't even like it at all. But Redford was still able to trade on the kind of boyish charm, despite the fact that he was in his 50s. And we know he's not playing younger here. He is playing a guy who, as the story opens, we flash back to probably 25 years earlier. He's at Yale University, and he and his best friend, they're both brilliant, they engage in some 1960s era computer hacking, which I didn't even know that could be a thing, but it is and was. So the character that Redford plays, he goes by Martin Bishop. That's not really his name. We think that it's his name, but it's actually somewhat of an alias, because, very mild spoilers, the events that occurred in the late 1960s will inform the rest of the movie. The caper at the center, directly on the nose, more on the nose than you think. That's not really a spoiler. It deals with the fallout of this opening sequence where these two brilliant young guys, they opened the wrong mailbox, would be one way to put it. They should have left this particular mailbox alone. Now, one thing that this movie does so well, and why it has aged so well, is when we meet Martin Bishop in the present day. I think it's Frisco, but we can just say it's California. But we meet him in present day, and he leads a kind of quirky, eccentric team of people whose job it is, and they work as a team, to break into security systems, sometimes hands-on and other times using computers. And this is something that obviously has gone further into the realm of cybersecurity. But in the world of this movie, the concept of cybersecurity was still, it existed, but it would not have been the average person being asked a question about the kind of security the characters are doing in this movie. If you had asked me in 1992, I would not have answered in any way the same as I would now. Because we all, especially if we're Gen Xers, we've been around and we understand the evolution of IT and certain protocols and firewalls. And I don't think that the word firewall is even used in this film. I don't believe that the tech wasn't even advanced enough for that word to have come into play, at least in the way that it is used and what it represents in 2024. But we meet this gang of this team that Redford has put together. And it is a who's who of great film actors. And in the case of Mary McDonnell, an Oscar-winning actress and a terrific actress in her own right. Each person has a particular role to play with the team of, and they're just trying to make a living, but each person on the team joined the team for a reason that involved some kind of law breaking in their past, or something where they were not able to do their normal or whatever function that they had performed. For example, Sidney Poitier's character was a CIA agent, mysteriously was either quit or disavowed or was let go by the agency. We don't know why. Dan Aykroyd's character, he goes by Mother. He's a conspiracy nut. He had his issues with breaking the law. And River Phoenix, the late River Phoenix, Joaquin's older brother, he has his issues. But Mary McDonnell's character actually does not have any, she doesn't have a criminal record. She's the only one. But David Strathairn, who plays Whistler, his character does not have the power of sight. He has his own legal troubles. So everyone on the team, they banded together for a reason. It's not that they're angry at the government necessarily, but they're trying to earn a living in a way that not that many people have the skills to do it. And we see that they're really good at their job. And Redford has the charm, on a scale of 1 to 10, he has the charm at 11. And this helps him to pull off what amount to capers. Early in the film, Martin Bishop, Redford's character, after we've seen them pull off what amounts to a heist, it's not a heist, but it feels like a heist, and they get paid by the bank whose security they easily bypassed and got inside. They're making money, but they're not making as much as they probably should, given the amount of skill that they all possess and the difficulty for the average person. They wouldn't even know where to start. So Redford, as Martin Bishop, is visited by two FBI guys. One of them is played by a terrific actor. He had been on it. I think he was on the show 30-something, Timothy Busfield, who a couple of years later has a leading role in a sports movie that a lot of people of my generation love, a baseball film called Little Big League. As baseball movies go, it's more realistic than most, and it's a film that is pretty well remembered by history. It didn't make a huge amount of money. That was the summer that Angels in the Outfield did bigger box office. But Timothy Busfield plays one of these FBI agents who immediately, he says, as Martin Bishop is questioning me, says, well, what the hell are you guys doing here? What are you asking me these questions for? And Timothy Busfield goes, relax, Marty. We're the good guys. And Redford, almost putting on his Jack Nicholson hat here, he doesn't break pose. He has a little smile on his face. And when Busfield goes, relax, Marty, we're the good guys. You have no idea what a relief that is. He immediately senses, these guys are full of shit. I couldn't trust them as far as I could bowl them. Fuck these guys. The problem is what the FBI agents propose to Martin, and by extension, his entire team. There is a black box. We'll call this a MacGuffin. Quentin Tarantino, Alfred Hitchcock, they would call it a MacGuffin. It is something that everybody wants, but we don't know exactly what it does or what it is. Well, in the world of this movie, we actually do find out. And it's very important when we do find out that's why everybody is looking for this thing. So this black box is the 1992 version of a magic decoder ring. It is some kind of a electromagnetic process, a computer program, but it doesn't really seem like a computer program, but it is something that will break every single code, every single password protect. It will bypass it. And there's an unbelievable moment where the David Strathairn character, he was nominated for supporting actor for Good Night and Good Luck, if I didn't mention. Because he's the whole primary cast is nothing but Oscar nominees and winners, including Sir Ben Kingsley, multiple nominee and Best Actor winner for Gandhi in 1982. But there is a moment in the film, mild spoiler, where our heroes understand what the black box can do and how powerful and terrifying it is because of what it can do. And David Strathairn, as Whistler, goes, "Anybody want to crash a plane?" And it is, that line would not have survived in a post 9/11 world, but it shows how powerful this tech is that they are dealing with and that they are learning about and why everybody wants it. And then you say, well, we're the good guys, Marty. I'm not so sure that there is a good guy when we're talking about something at this level of power. This is not a code breaker. This is the code breaker. So we follow, and they're not even called the Sneakers or anything like that. So when I first saw that this movie was being produced in the pre-internet era, I was just excited because it was Robert Redford. His previous film, Havana, which he made with the late great Sidney Pollack, it's okay. It didn't do that well. And Redford had directed a film in the late 80s called The Milagro Beanfield War, which was supposed to get a lot of Oscar buzz. It didn't really, but most people who've seen it said, oh, it's a terrific film. So he was kind of making a bit of a comeback. And the thing with Redford, and he and his pal Warren Beatty shared this, they shared it as far as they were difficult to pin down for projects, but once they committed and were in it for the long haul, you were going to get 110%. They were never going to give less than maximal effort, whether it was on the producer side, the actor side, or in the case of Redford in some movie like Ordinary People or Quiz Show where he was nominated for director, he was going to give it everything he had. So when I saw that Redford was making a bit of a comeback, oh, he's making a movie called Sneakers, in a million years I wouldn't have said, oh, it must be about security breaches or people who breach different forms of security, and that's how they make a living. No, I thought it was some kind of a joke about, maybe it was a Nike movie, right? The movie Air, maybe it was that. And then when my father and I were in theaters to see, I'm not sure, it may have been Lethal Weapon 3. I think it was a summer 1992 film, but we were going to see that, and then we saw a preview, and when Robert Redford said, oh, this is that movie I was reading about, and it turned out it was about security. And how do we breach this? And how do we breach that? So I mentioned how it has elements of the crime, comedy, and caper in a similar vein to The Sting. Now, The Sting has more deliberate misdirection as far as potential double crosses and triple crosses. And this character is not really working for who you think. And that one also isn't. But maybe he actually is. Maybe it's a triple cross. This film has twists, but the twists are more straightforward and conventional. This is not a gotcha movie. This is a film where you are pretty sure that the heroes are not all going to die. It doesn't feel like that kind of film. But there are moments where it appears that they're boxed into a corner, or that they're backed into a corner, that they are boxed in from a physical, geographical perspective, and you say, how are they going to get out of it? And there are moments in the movie where Redford's character of Martin Bishop could be easily killed, but because he has yet to acquire what's in a box, well, we can't really kill him yet. And so he manages to stay in the game and survive through equal parts random luck. If you're not going to say, well, he doesn't die because he's Robert Redford. Redford has died in a number of movies, I should point out. But the story holds. it is believable why he does not get either arrested or shot at various points. And when you find out who the kind of main villain is, it makes even more sense why everybody connected to this nefarious plot. We can't just kill this guy. We've got our orders. Even though nobody says that, this is a movie where after you've seen it and you run it back in your head, it makes perfect sense. So Dan Aykroyd had been nominated, and many people thought he could win, for Best Supporting Actor for Driving Miss Daisy, the film which famously won the Best Movie of the Year. And the filmmaker, Bruce Beresford, didn't even get the courtesy of a Best Director nomination, leading Billy Crystal, one of his great one-liners at the Oscars. He said, well, congratulations to Driving Miss Daisy. The film must have directed itself. Redford had won his Oscar for directing Ordinary People. Unfortunately, in the year of Raging Bull, I hate to say it, Ordinary People is a great movie, but that should have been Scorsese's award. Sidney Poitier, In the Heat of the Night in the 60s, and he was nominated other times. David Strathairn, as I said, was nominated for Good Night and Good Luck. River Phoenix was nominated for a film, 1988. I think it was an 88 movie, Running on Empty. He didn't win. But Mary McDonnell, sometimes you have people who just end up giving two incredible performances, entirely different kinds of characters in the same year. Mary McDonnell in 1992, she hits an absolute grand slam. Her performance in Sneakers is great because she has a lot of scenes with Redford and she absolutely holds his own. The two of them were like former flames and now he needs her help. He gets her involved and then she can't just walk away. She gets too deeply involved in what the team is trying to do. So Mary McDonnell in this movie, she matches Redford's lightness of touch. And this is not something that you necessarily would pick up on. You're watching a movie, you're into the story, the plot, and you wouldn't necessarily be saying, how are these characters relating to one another as opposed to those? So Dan Aykroyd is a comic actor most of the time, but not in this film. His character gets laughs because he's a conspiracy theorist, not because Dan Aykroyd is funny and quirky. River Phoenix plays his role very, very down the middle. Sidney Poitier, his character has a wellspring of anger that you realize, okay, stay out of this guy's way. He might be a little bit older, but don't fuck with this guy. And David Strathairn's character, he has his moments of being more lighthearted, but it's essentially a serious character, except there's a moment where he has to drive the truck. I'll just give you a mild spoiler there. It's one of the highlights of the film. But Mary McDonnell, in the scenes with Redford, she matches his energy, and most of their kind of alone time, they're each trying to one-up the other. It is a very playful, if you want to use the word flirtation, because obviously they used to hook up or they were together. We don't know the exact mechanics of it. But she does not play the role as dour, and she does not play it for the drama. She plays it for the humor. And she even gets to go on what would almost be like a Tinder date in 2024, and she is hilarious. She isn't somebody who is necessarily known as being particularly comedic. The previous year, she's really good in Grand Canyon with Kevin Kline and Steve Martin and Danny Glover, among others. What an incredible movie. Mary Louise Parker, great cast, great movie. And she had been Oscar nominated for, I think she was nominated for Dances with Wolves. That was the Costner film that took the big awards. Again, at Martin Scorsese's expense. You have Goodfellas. Scorsese should have won picture, should have won director. I love Kevin Costner, but Dances with Wolves was not better than Goodfellas. It just wasn't. I'm sorry. I love Costner, like I said. But in 92, in addition to Sneakers, Mary McDonnell worked with the phenomenal American independent legend filmmaker John Sayles. And they made a movie together, also with David Strathairn, who, as I said, played Whistler in this film. David Strathairn has a key supporting role, but it's Mary McDonnell's movie, and the film is called Passion Fish. And it's not John Sayles' best film, but it is really good. And Mary McDonnell, for all the lightness and the humor that we see from her in Sneakers, in Passion Fish, she plays a character who is really unlikable. She's a soap opera star, a woman whose family had money, and she made a lot of money as a soap opera star. She has suffered an accident, and she is now a paraplegic. I don't think that she's expected to regain full use of her legs, but she, has complete use of her arms. But she's not happy about any of it. She has a terrible attitude, and she has a haircut that if you watch the movie now, you'd say, that's a Karen. Look at Karen. She has a Karen haircut in a movie that was released in 1992. I would argue from a pop culture perspective, she might be the first Karen. It is such a great performance. 92 wasn't a great year for actresses. That was another amazing Billy Crystal joke at those Oscars where he said 92, it's the year of the woman here at the Oscars, but a lot of people felt that this really was a poor year for women's parts. Some of the best women's parts of 1992 were Sharon Stone's in Basic Instinct. I mean, that's a pretty nervy joke, and Sharon, to her credit, giggled away. She had to have been tipped off. She was too prepared for that. But in 92, Emma Thompson ended up winning Best Actress for Howard's End. I love Emma Thompson. She's so good in The Remains of the Day the following year. Love her in Dead Again, 1991. There's a movie that came out right around the same time as Grand Canyon. But I believe that Mary McDonnell gave the best performance by an actress in 1992 in Passion Fish. It's just unfortunate that the Academy only saw fit to give her a nomination. Maybe they felt they owed it to Emma Thompson. I have no idea. Because Emma's so good in Dead Again, they almost could have nominated her for that. But this movie, with all the contortions of plot in Sneakers, it's never confusing. And there's something to be said for not losing your audience, because you're trying to tell a crime story, a caper story, and leave room for humor. You don't want people scratching their head, wondering what the hell is going on. And there are a couple of moments, for example, in The Sting, where if you're not paying attention, you're saying, I don't get this. Paul Newman and Robert Shaw's characters are arch enemies. Why is he going to Paul Newman's gambling den? And how did Paul Newman get a gambling den? Like, there's a lot of stuff in The Sting where if you miss a minute, you are going to be completely lost and you're going to be asking a lot of questions. This film does not have any of those kind of moments where you're like, now wait a minute, what's happening? The characters are clearly delineated. The performances are all crisp. And the film is just an absolute home run. And maybe it strains credibility at various points. I'm not going to spoil anything else. But it feels like it could happen. There is a moment, and this is not a spoiler, where Robert Redford as Martin Bishop has to recall in as much detail as possible, without having seen exactly where he was. And because of Whistler's ability to discern sound, they are able to reconstruct where Martin Bishop has been. Now, people would say, that's way too far-fetched. There's no way that would happen. Well, I'm not so sure about that. The film takes great pains to show that without the power of sight, Whistler has incredible, heightened, the other senses are all heightened. And it works. And we know that Martin Bishop is brilliant. So Sneakers, the total budget, including marketing, was somewhere around $25 million. And I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the episode that there are certain films with big names, as this movie, how many Oscar nominees and how many total Oscar nominations from the primary cast, including Sir Ben Kingsley, a ridiculous number. There are certain movies that got good reviews, made money, and for whatever reason, still somehow slid in between the proverbial cracks. And Sneakers grossed more than $100 million at the box office in its initial theatrical run. So it grossed more than 4 times its production cost. That marks it as a significant hit. I don't know why it is not more widely beloved, why it is not on more people's list of, this is one of my favorite movies. But Redford's turn as Martin Bishop, I think his performance here, I like it better, quote unquote, than Johnny Hooker in The Sting almost 20 years earlier. I feel like Redford didn't really have as much to do in that particular role. It's Paul Newman's movie. As much as it's a movie about two movie stars, Henry Gondorff is the driver of the action. He's the engine. Johnny Hooker is just kind of along for the ride in that film. In this movie, Martin Bishop is the primary mover. And even as he appears to be in the throes of being manipulated by the bad guys, he's always a step or two ahead. I certainly would have it in my top 5 favorite Robert Redford performances. You see, Redford had so much talent for comedy that didn't get tapped into that often. The closest to a broad comedy that he did, in kind of his salad days, if you will, is Legal Eagles, which is a story that involves murder and mystery, but ultimately it's fucking hilarious. And Redford's timing is impeccable. He could have been a film comic very, very easily, with the smile, the hair, but he mostly went in different directions. And in this movie, he is it's right on the button. His performance is perfect, balancing the funny and the serious, and with the occasional moments of regret over what happened in the 60s. It's one of his best film performances. And the rest of the cast matches him. And mild spoiler, when we realize what happened to his counterpart from the beginning of the film, it's hard not to feel bad. As he does, you're almost empathizing with both of them when you realize what's taken place. And this is just a great film. I give it 9 out of 10 on if you're going to go with the 10 scale. It's almost a 4-star movie. I give it between 3.5 and 4 stars out of 4. I never really used the 5-star system. Now, it's not currently, it was briefly on Amazon Prime without having to pay extra couple of bucks. I don't think it's free on any service now. I think you'll have to pay a few dollars to watch it on Amazon Prime. But this is another of those movies that gets my absolute highest recommendation. I don't know anyone who has seen it who does not say, holy crap, that was way better than I expected. If you go onto YouTube and check out the movie reactors, all of them seeing it for the first time, they say something like either that was incredible or that was a lot better than I was expecting it to be. A terrific film. And the director, Phil Alden Robinson, speaking of Kevin Costner, he had done Field of Dreams 3 years prior. This is, I don't love Field of Dreams. I think this is probably the best film that he ever made. I'm not ashamed to say that. I don't love Field of Dreams. But anyway, that's just my opinion. But Sneakers, released on this day, 1992. I had just graduated high school and I had begun college. Directed by Phil Alden Robinson and starring Robert Redford, Mary McDonnell, Sir Ben Kingsley, River Phoenix, Dan Aykroyd, Sidney Poitier, Timothy Busfield, and a terrific David Strathairn as Whistler. This has been episode 297 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Monday morning with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or any of the others we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.